I bet you didn't know. You just met someone. They smiled, extended a hand, and said their name clearly. You repeated it back. You even thought consciously in that exact moment, I will remember this. 4 seconds later, you cannot recall it. Not a fuzzy version, not a close guess. Nothing. The name has simply vanished, as if it had never been spoken at all. This happens to almost everyone, repeatedly, for an entire lifetime. And the explanation is not that you have a bad memory. It's that names are, structurally, one of the hardest things a human brain is ever asked to store. Start with what makes a name different from almost everything else you learn about a person. When you meet someone, your brain absorbs an enormous amount of contextual information almost instantly. Their face, their height, the tone of their voice, whether they seem nervous or confident, where you are, what you were just talking about. All of this gets bound together into a rich, multi-sensory impression. The name, by contrast, is the one piece of information in that entire bundle that has zero connection to anything else. There is no logical reason a person named Sarah looks like Sarah. The sound of the word and the appearance of the face are completely arbitrary partners, forced together with no overlapping features at all. Cognitive scientists call this the Baker-Baker paradox, and it comes from a genuinely strange experiment. Psychologist Gary Cohen ran a study where participants were shown a face and told in one condition that the person's occupation was Baker, and in another condition that the person's last name was Baker. Same word, identical information content, but participants remembered the occupation far more reliably than the name, even though the word itself was exactly the same. Why would the same word be harder to remember in one context than another? Because Baker, the occupation, connects automatically to an entire network of existing knowledge in your brain. Ovens, flour, bread rising, early mornings. Your brain has thousands of associative hooks already built for that concept, so the new information slots neatly into existing infrastructure. Baker, the surname, has none of that. It's not describing anything. It's an arbitrary label with no semantic content attached, a pure, isolated fact floating with nothing to grab onto. A name is, cognitively speaking, almost always this second kind of information. Pure label. No hooks. This connects to something memory researchers call elaborative encoding, the principle that information gets remembered in proportion to how deeply and meaningfully it's processed at the moment of learning, not simply how many times you hear it. When you hear someone's name, you are very rarely encoding it elaborately. You are usually doing something else entirely, managing the social performance of the introduction itself, maintaining eye contact, crafting an appropriate facial expression, thinking about what you're going to say next, worrying even faintly about how you're coming across. Neuroscientist and memory researcher Daniel Schachter has described this as a classic case of encoding failure. Not a failure of storage or retrieval, but a failure that happens because the information was never deeply processed in the first place. You cannot fail to retrieve something your brain never properly filed away to begin with. In other words, the name was never lost. It was barely there. There is also a structural problem specific to spoken language. Names typically arrive at the exact moment of introduction, a high cognitive load social event where your brain is simultaneously processing a new face, a new voice, the social script of greeting someone, and often a small flash of self-consciousness about your own presentation. Psychologist George Miller's foundational research on working memory demonstrated that humans can typically hold only about 4 to 7 discrete chunks of new information in active attention at once, and a name dropped into the middle of an already crowded social moment is competing for extremely limited cognitive real estate against several other simultaneous demands. The name doesn't fail to enter memory because it's unimportant. It fails because it arrives during the worst possible traffic jam your attention will face all day. This is also why you can sometimes remember a face perfectly, recall the entire conversation you had with someone, even recall precisely where you met them, while the name remains permanently, frustratingly blank. Facial recognition and episodic memory for events rely on different, more robust neural systems than the recall of arbitrary verbal labels. Your brain kept the rich, multi-sensory experience. It just never properly filed the one isolated contextless fact buried inside it. So what actually works? Memory researchers consistently point to the same solution: forced elaboration. Repeating the name back immediately, consciously linking it to something, anything, a rhyme, a visual image, a person you already know with the same name. Using it again within the first minute of conversation. Each of these techniques does the same underlying thing. They force the brain to build at least one associative hook where, otherwise, none would exist. The name stops being an isolated fact and becomes connected to something your memory system already knows how to hold on to. None of this means you don't care about the people you meet. It means you're asking your brain to instantly memorize a completely arbitrary sound, under social pressure, with no semantic content, in the middle of one of the highest cognitive load moments of ordinary social life. Most memory systems, evolved or otherwise, would struggle with that exact task. So the next time you forget someone's name 4 seconds after hearing it, you're not rude and you're not careless. You're simply running into one of the strangest blind spots built into the architecture of human memory itself. The place where a person becomes unforgettable, but the one arbitrary sound attached to them slips away before it ever really arrives. If you learned something new, be sure to like and follow for more facts and stories.